It all began as an ordinary day in September. An ordinary day in Raccoon City. A city controlled by Umbrella. No one dared to oppose them, and that lack of strength would ultimately lead to their destruction. I suppose they had to suffer the consequences of their actions, but there would be no forgiveness. If only they had had the courage to fight. It's true that once the wheels of justice begin to turn, nothing can stop them. Nothing. It was Raccoon City's last chance, and my last chance. My last escape.
Well guys, it's another Resident Evil media blowout. We kind of knew today was going to happen. All signs were indicating that once it wasn't going to be at the Video Game Awards, the Resident Evil 3 announcement trailer would make it as part of either an earlier announcement that Capcom did on their own, and then when Sony announced they were going to do a state of play, I think it became very, very apparent what was going to happen. And yeah, so we've been spoilt by sort of some bits of information. We now know that Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil Resistance are all part of the same package, and that package will release on April the 3rd. We have been treated to, as I record this, it's 5:30 on the 10th of December, so I've just got in from work, and so far we've had two bits of footage. We've had the announcement trailer, and we have had the just forgive me if my eyes aren't necessarily engaging. I'm just kind of taking in everything as I see it. So yeah, we've had the announcement trailer, and we've had the like developers special message, which has actually shown some actual gameplay, and we'll talk about that a little bit now. So the trailer starts off returning to the sort of first person approach that the Remake 2 trailer did. Except this time we're obviously seeing through the eyes of Jill herself, and it's almost like we're getting an extended sequence of a chase through her apartment, if you like, and then it in fact what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it out, and then I'll talk through it as well. So yeah, it starts off with the clock when we're seeing stuff from Resident Evil 2. And I didn't actually realise, but Leon and Ada are actually there, aren't they? And God, I've previously only watched this on a mobile phone at work, so to actually see it like blown up now, I can actually see the fact that you can actually see Leon and Claire in it properly. So we're going to wind back to the previous day. We're not going September 28th daylight now. We're already starting in the evening of September 28th, or at least this trailer's starting in September 28th. So again, we're assuming this is the apartment, and she's going to be running through it, and you can almost assume that this is an extended version of her being propelled through the window at the beginning of Resident Evil 3. Could it be? We'll get it out there straight away. It's not Patricia Lee, unfortunately, playing Jill. Teppen, you betrayed me. I'll never forgive you ever again. And then that's kind of a nice throwback, the sort of forward roll
Jill, over here!
Out of the building. And actually, you know what? You know, as much as we're not assuming these remakes are replacing canon, it's Mikhail.
The city is completely cut off, isolated.
Don't look at me like that, alright? I'm not infected.
Brad.
But right now it's got a hard on for the only 2 stars left in town. They don't need a bleeding heart like you getting in the way.
Still not sure on Carlos's design, but I'm sure it'll work within the context of of the final game.
It gets worse every night.
Jill looks like she's been building an entire case file against Umbrella in her apartment.
I can't stop them all.
You gotta get out of there.
You guys are the ones who caused all of this.
No, wait. Oh, come on.
I love that shot of Jill there, looking at herself in the mirror. I would imagine that's where the game's going to start.
Dreaming.
And I'll just go back. And I will do this a lot more streamlined here. I'm just trying to find specific bits. So yeah, Mikhail looks cool. He looks notably older than we were perhaps expecting. Whether that's just down to the increased level of detail, or if they are actually changing his character up quite a bit, who knows? But yeah, that's Mikhail. Brad looks like Brad. He looks like he is indeed modelled on the poster that we've seen in Resident Evil 2, and you can't tell me for a minute they weren't developing those two at the same time, because of course they were. That I don't know the backstory of the development of this game or anything, but one would assume that they knew they'd be building a Remake 3 eventually, so it makes sense that if you're going to build some assets for 2, you may as well build it for 3. And things like that. So, you know, having Brad, like a nice bit of continuity there. Still surprises me we never got Zombie Brad. This chap, as we see him walking up the steps, we assume is Nikolai. And the UBCS look to have a new uniform there. You can't quite see the logo in that. It's a bit frustrating. I don't need a bleeding heart like you getting in the way. We assume that this chap here is Tyrell Patrick, who dies in the hospital in the original game. So, again, you can assume that if they really are gonna make this a reimagining, then it gives them such a grand scope to be able to realise, like a lot of the UBCS, you know, in greater detail and depth. The only thing I would really hope this game retains with regards to the UBCS is that I think Resident Evil 3 is one of the best in the series for environmental storytelling. And, you know, one of the... You know, we've discussed at length on the podcast, and I know George Trevor's a big fan of a lot of the environmental storytelling in Resident Evil 3, and one of the best pieces is the UBCS soldier who, like, defends the girl in the clock tower, and, you know, you can find them both sort of embracing each other as they've died, and it's quite tragic, and there's a nice couple of files that accompany a lot of these stories but for the UBCS, and it depicts their plight in Raccoon as extremely tragic, even though they are like hired mercs. Still one of the sort of finer aspects of environmental storytelling, I think, in the entire series, and I really hope that they get a sense of that in this game, because I do honestly think that Resident Evil 2 lacked some of that just classic environmental storytelling. I think you sometimes can lose that when you're having to throw in just so much detail to make it look so much more realistic. You lose a sense of artistic style about it sometimes. And that's not to say there weren't stories to tell in Resident Evil 2, of course there were, the remake. I just don't think it was quite as on board as the earlier games, and likewise I do miss that ability to be able to examine you know, cupboards and shelves and tables, and you get a little bit of insight into what the character's thinking. I know some people argue there's less of a need for that now because you can see the detail up close, you don't necessarily need it described to you, but I still like the fact that whenever I read a text screen at the bottom of a classic Resident Evil, you were getting the character's insight. I don't want my own, I want what the character's thinking, and I hope they retain a sense of that. So here we've got the we've got a chart that evidently Jill's put together. They've got a new map of Raccoon with a new layout, and we know Raccoon City's been redesigned, so I suppose it only makes sense it would have a new layout. But I still think it's a shame. As I've said on the podcast before, one of my biggest sort of one of my biggest bugbears with continuity is geographical issues. I don't mind like the occasional little things being bolted on, like the way Outbreak sort of respectively added to environments we knew before, but completely changed layouts is always a big issue for me, and it was one of the things that I initially dismissed Operation Raccoon City for, because like the hospital just looks completely different. I know some people could say it's a different hospital, but you know, it's clear that as we move into sort of more remake territory, we are going to be abandoning the original designs a lot more, which I find a shame. You get to see the briefest hint of a hunter here, and that looks like it's going to go. I mean, I assume that's kind of like an eye, and then we get into real Paul Anderson territory here with you know, surgeons and whatnot. Actually, you actually see them working on Nemesis. I'm almost expecting Jason Isaacs to be there somewhere, throwing a bit of dialogue in. Going to be really interesting to see if they change the backstory in some way to the game, to Nemesis. And we've got the pre-order classic costume pack right at the end of the trailer. Jill looks fantastic there, it must be said. And I feel like I'm in a very, very different place to where I was this time last year when we were talking about Resident Evil 2, because at that point we weren't aware of the impact Resident Evil 2 was going to have on the canon. And now we kind of know they coexist, and your remake is a kind of abridged Cliff Notes version of what is the main story, which you accept is the original. Capcom even have alluded to that. You go to the original when you want your canon. Because of that approach, I feel like I can go into this game with a lot more open mind, with a much greater open mind. I feel like I'm not so bothered now, because I know it's not in a way trying to replace Resident Evil 3. It's just going to go alongside it. I mean, if anything, look in the extended amount of detail they're perhaps going to put into the characters and the storylines and whatnot. The original may well end up being a Cliff Notes version of itself. But I still am going to dismiss, if we're talking about like raw canon and a timeline that you comprehensively put together, then it will always be the original for me, irrespective of how much the remake adds. I will always refer back to the original. There has also been this bit of information. I've just seen this on the Discord. I don't actually know where it's come from. I assume it's the official site or from the Capcom press pack. And it has some information and some backstory on Jill, which potentially gives us some information we've never had before. And again, this is where you get into that sort of really difficult grey area for canon in terms of what do you extract from the remake, what do you not. And in this, it has explained why Jill takes so much time in Raccoon City. Jill is determined to continue investigating Umbrella, the creators of the deadly T virus at the heart of the incident, but her investigation has been impeded by a suspension and an order to remain at home. What's more, her apartment appears to be under round-the-clock surveillance. So this is a new piece of information that, to my knowledge, and I'm sure there'll be people who correct me if I'm wrong, we've never been really aware of before, but this explains why she decides to spend so much time in Raccoon. Whether you like that or not, it's still better than nothing, I suppose. I just can't imagine the Jill that has been depicted in the series up until now would just simply stay at home and follow orders when Chris is, at this point, gone to Europe to continue the fight. So yeah, it's a bit of it's a bit of interesting lore, if you like. But again, if you extract certain bits from this game but choose to ignore others, then you get into a real, just such a grey area when it comes to canon in a series that is already full of grey areas. So yeah, but with regards to changes to characters and costumes and things, they don't bother me in a way that they maybe did this time a year ago with Resident Evil 2. I actually think Jill's redesign looks pretty cool. I think I've seen some people say it's a little bit too similar to what Lara Croft wears in the Tomb Raider reboot, and I can see that. But hey, if you want it, here's the original, and the original looks to be very, very faithful. Still not really buying that that's Carlos, even in the original, and it's not really as faithful a classic costume as Jill's is there. Another note there, I know some people are saying this may well change before the release date, but I don't know, because we've got a collector's edition which shows a statue of Jill, and it looks like she's holding the Glock. In the artwork here of the pre-order costume, obviously the footage we've seen so far, and now this pre-order statue, we've got a what looks to be Jill wielding a Glock. So maybe she's had to turn a samurai edge in, and it's a personal piece. I was not going to bother with the collector's edition this time round, because as good as the Resident Evil 2 one was, it was extremely expensive for what you got, and as great as the keys were, and as much as I praised the pack back in the day when it first came out, I've not had the greatest desire to like get everything out of it. So it's kind of all, you know, it's still boxed, and I said to myself that I'm not gonna bother with the like top tier collector's edition of Resident Evil 3. And that was until I saw this damn statue of Jill, which I must say is absolutely fantastic. And one of the things I said about the last collector's edition, the Resident Evil 2 one, was just simply how high quality the Leon statue was, and it really, really is like massively high quality. I've got a few collector's editions scattered around, and a lot of the figurines and the statues you get are often really, really quite poor and don't reflect the price you're paying for that pack. I must say the statue for Leon, and now it looks to be the same manufacturer who's done Jill, and I think that has actually been confirmed, looks phenomenal, and it's going to be, yeah, I can see myself getting it again. Another thing from the collector's edition, I've noticed no classic soundtrack. Now, whether that's something that'll be added at a later date, or whether they're just simply not bothering this time, be a bit of a shame. Although I would say that although it has certainly its highlights, the Resident Evil 3 soundtrack, I don't think it's quite as iconic as the Resident Evil 2 one. So I can appreciate why this one maybe wouldn't. Maybe they're going to go for a greater emphasis on music this time. In the collector's edition, we've also got the map, and we've got the art book, and then a Stars item box this time to go inside with the RPD one that came last time. So that's going to be a neat little pack for people. Just going to fire up the special developer message, and it doesn't really show much more. I'll let you guys sit and actually listen to what the guys have got to say. But in terms of footage, we get to see a little bit more of Jill. There's a little bit more gameplay, and interestingly, it looks like this game has a dodge mechanic that's very, very similar to what looks to be the Revelation style dodge. So here we've got a zombie that's going to lunge, and that to me looks very much like the Revelations 2 style one. That doesn't look like it's happened on reaction to movement. It looks like that's actually been a prompt or a button, and that's cool because I really quite like the modern Resident Evil games dodging. I think Resident Evil 6 did dodging really well, and I think Revelations 2 did it pretty well, although I didn't like so much how you had to make it better through skill points, but that's irrelevant. A lot of people saying Jill looking like Mila Jovovich here. I can't necessarily disagree, but I don't think that's going to be the movies infecting the game too much, and I don't think Nemesis is going to be Matt, so you guys can all just go ahead and calm down. And the only last little bit that we can say about the special developer messages, they talk about Resident Evil Resistance, which is obviously Project Resistance has been renamed. And from what I understand, and I'm a little bit behind, so just bear with me, I think they've named one of the last two characters, and I believe he's called Martin Sandwich. What a name! He's the Frodo-looking dude. Take a look at him. He's that is Frodo Baggins, ladies and gentlemen. Martin Sandwich. He is on a quest to take the One Ring to the RPD. That's what he's doing. Martin Sandwich. I don't know if they've named the other character yet. As I just Kendo, shout out to Kendo's meme shop, who, as I'm just looking at the podcast Discord, has used that meme of me from the last reaction video and put it against Frodo and Martin Sandwich. So you've called me out right now before I've even had a chance to publish this. I'm just scrolling down, and Kendo is absolutely hammering me on Discord at the minute, using my reaction faces to sum up many of his own personal feelings, I think. Martin Sandwich being called out as Jill's cousin. This is just the kind of silliness that Capcom invite, and yeah, should we love it? I don't know, guys, I don't know, but Martin Sandwich, that's hell of a thing. And we've got Becca Woolett. She is the last of the characters that they've revealed today. Now, I don't know whether that means they're capping it at 6 characters. It's maybe already been talked about in a press release or whatever. I've got to do this really quickly because I'm not going to have time to record it for the rest of the evening. So if there has been any more reveals for Resident Evil Resistance, then I apologise. So just wrapping up then, I think the game looks good from what we've seen. I'd initially feared that we were just going to get like an FMV kind of trailer, but the fact that it is actually some gameplay in there is actually really quite reassuring, even if it is more in the special message video. It's going to be again an exciting time. Some people within the community need to just calm down, because I've already seen messages today of people demanding Code Veronica next, and it's like, can like Resident Evil 3 actually like come out first before we start talking about the next game, which we should be talking about Resident Evil 8 by now. The series is, I could bang on about this all the time, so I'm not going to derail another video by talking about it, but remake culture, it really just needs to do one after this. I appreciate and I completely understand why 2 and 3 needed to be remade, but that is it now. Code Veronica in Framework MT Engine, get that ported to all the latest consoles, get it on PC so it's there, it's future-proofed, and let's move on at last. And for all these people who are saying you want the remake done in an over-the-shoulder perspective, all I can say is that's a bad take. I'm sorry, I can't stress how much I disagree with that. The remake is a timeless masterpiece, and it doesn't matter when you were born or what decade you grew up in, it's a timeless masterpiece. Just give it some more time, give it some patience. So there's not really much more I can say. We're sort of about there with all that's been revealed today. I wish I had more time to actually go through it like frame by frame and talk about it, but you know, it's a miracle. I mean, I've got the time to do this, to be honest, with how today's gone. Sorry, I've not been able to keep on top of like the Twitter as much as I could have done. These kind of reveals always happen when I'm at work, and it's really difficult to try and just keep on top of everything. So yeah, with a different mindset, one could say I'm like really looking forward to seeing, you know, Jill back in what you would consider to be a prime. It's going to be really good. And because this game I know is not really going to damage the canon in any way whatsoever, I can fully embrace all the changes it's going to make, and you know, almost look forward to it. So I think Capcom are on to another winner. All they've got to basically do is just build on the kind of stuff they did with Remake 2 and go from there. I think a lot will hinge on how the Nemesis works in the final game. I'm still not hot on the appearance of him. I know we've got some screenshots here of Nemesis, and again, that nose it's a bit standout, isn't it? The jaw is really wide open there, and that machine device, whether it encompasses a tentacle or whatever on the front, maybe it's just protective covering for his heart, but it does also look like he's wrapped in, well, I mean, I want to say that's a coat, but it could almost look like a bin liner with caution stickers on it. So yeah, that's the Nemesis. For fear of rambling on, I'll leave it at that. Let us know what you guys saw. We're going to be recording our podcast about this, you know, reveal very soon. And so that'll hopefully be out before Christmas, time permitting with the edit and everything. So thank you very much for listening. We had a really nice subscriber boost last time with the last video, so if you really like what you see and want to support the podcast, hit us a like and subscribe, and by all means join in the conversation on the Discord, get in touch through Twitter and Facebook, and you know, hit us some comments below, and we'll respond accordingly. Thank you very much. Enjoy further details as they come out, and yeah, we'll see you very soon, and bye bye for now. Cheers, bye bye.